When I was 21 years old, I had a camping experience that never left me the same. In fact, I still remember it like it happened yesterday. It was the summer of 2018. Some of my college buddies and I had all decided to go camping. We picked the woods we were all familiar with, plus we knew it would be crawling with campers at that particular season, so it was a good choice. We were all 6 in number, and we went in 3 pairs. Aside from Lucy, my girlfriend, who was just camping for the first time, the rest of us had camping experiences, and we were all excited to add one more to the list. Personally, my family and I had camped in those woods a couple of times, so I was very familiar with them. Our initial plan was to camp in those woods for 3 days, but after something horrible happened to us on the first night, we were forced to leave. Like every other camper, we packed enough supplies to last us for 3 days and left for our camping adventure. Since the camp location we picked was a 3-hour drive away from our college, we decided to go around 11 a.m. and arrived at the location around 2 p.m. When we arrived at the camp location as expected, there were a few campers around. But because we wanted some privacy, we decided to set up our tents as far away from everyone as possible. That afternoon, we managed to set up our tents and do a couple of other things. By the time we were done setting up our tents and unpacking, it was already evening, so we decided to unwind and have some fun. One of the things we packed with us was beer. Lots of beer. Because we were all in high spirits that evening, we decided to drink too and have fun. Mariah, one of the girls with us, had suggested that we play music from our MP3 to spice things up, and without even thinking about it, we all agreed. I think a couple of minutes after the music started playing, one of the other campers, an old, wrinkled, and scrawny man whose tent was a bit far from us, came to us and told us to turn down the music. He didn't seem very happy about it, but we ignored him. One of my friends, Adam, was the one who spoke to him. He told the old man to either deal with the music or go home, and the man left in anger, grumbling some words we didn't hear. I'll be honest, even after the old man showed his discomfort about the loud music we played, we didn't turn the volume down. Instead, we turned it up and ended up partying all night. We knew we were ruining the quiet camping experience for the other campers, but we didn't actually care. Aside from the loud music, we played a couple of games, drank till we were all tipsy, and around 2 a.m. we all went to bed. Now, the part where things get really terrifying is the fact that something or someone attacked us in our tents while we were all asleep. I remember waking up to Mariah screaming and running out of her tent. She woke up to see that she had scratch marks on her arms. Deep scratch marks, to be precise. It wasn't just her. Adam, her boyfriend, had similar scratches on the left side of his face and left arm, too. Since we were all drunk that night, none of us remembered seeing or hearing anyone walk close to or around our tent. When we realized what had happened, we were so shaken and couldn't even say anything. We just stood there by the remains of the fire with a blank stare. I guess Mariah's scream alerted the rest of the campers because they all came running to us as soon as they heard her scream. As soon as they saw that we had been attacked, they called the police. While we were all waiting for the police to arrive, the other campers tried to ask us some questions. When the police arrived and checked Adam and Mariah's tent, there was no tear or a sign of forced entry. Whoever had attacked them had unzipped the tent and attacked them in their sleep. The most frustrating part was that none of us knew what had happened, and despite all the questioning from the police and the other campers, we couldn't give any solid answers. I know I've heard many stories about camping gone wrong, but I never thought such a horrible thing would happen to us. That was the last time any of us went camping, especially Adam and Mariah. I also stopped drinking, because I never want to be that vulnerable and unaware of my environment ever again. As a child, One of the fun activities I always looked forward to with my family was camping. I always looked forward to camping with my parents because of the scary and unbelievable stories my dad would tell by the campfire. I don't know why, but for some weird reason, I think the stories my dad told me by the campfire stuck more than the other regular stories. So there's this camping experience my family and I had that I can never forget. I was 11 years old when it happened. As usual, my parents suggested we go camping at a place we had never been. It sounded fun because we would get to see new places while hiking and exploring the forest. I was even the one who picked that particular location because I heard it had a waterfall. Since my parents always worked around the clock and were barely free, we decided that camping in their free time would make up for all their lost time with me. As usual, we packed all we needed and left on a Saturday morning. Later that day, we arrived at the forest we had picked, and my dad helped us set up our tents. Around 3 p.m., when we were all done setting up our tents, we decided to go for a short walk to explore the woods. We didn't go deep into the woods that evening because it was getting dark already. We had followed a trail, and that same trail led us back to our tents. When we returned to our tent that evening, we had dinner, and my dad told me his made-up stories before I went to bed. The next morning, I woke up very early because I was so excited about exploring the woods and finally seeing the waterfall I'd been looking forward to. Unfortunately, the weather didn't look good. It was already drizzling by the time I woke up, but I think around 10 a.m., the drizzling stopped and the sky cleared up a bit. As soon as the sky cleared up, my parents and I decided to start our adventure for the day. Since the weather was already cold, we didn't have to deal with the sun. In fact, everything seemed to be going pretty well. We were all enjoying our hiking, and we ended up hiking into the woods for hours. At precisely 2 p.m., my parents suggested we return to our tent for lunch. By this time, the sky was already building up with rain and we were so exhausted, so going back to our tents at that time really made sense. In all our camping experiences as a family, my dad had always been the one with the eidetic memory. By barely looking at the trees and places we passed, he would lead us back to our tents in no time. But on that fateful day, something was wrong. My mom and I expected my dad to do his usual thing and take us back to the tents, but that didn't happen, not as fast as we expected. I don't know how, but my dad couldn't take us back to our tents. We walked for hours in the direction we thought was leading us back to our tent, but it ended up being the wrong place. As of that time, the rain had started falling heavily, so we were literally walking in the rain to find our tents. What would have taken us 2 to 3 hours to return to our tent ended up with us walking in circles. We were actually lost in the woods, and that was the first time I saw my dad so terrified. He didn't say he was, but his looks and body language did the talking. Thankfully, after hours of taking wrong turns and walking for miles in the wrong direction, we found a ranger who helped us find our way back. As unbelievable as it sounds, we were only 10 minutes away from our camping site. And that was pretty weird, because my parents and I had circled that area, but couldn't find our tents. Later that night, we retired to our tents and canceled our hiking plans. As soon as we woke up the next morning, we packed up and left. To this day, neither my parents nor I can explain why we couldn't find our tents sooner. Anyway, I'm just glad we found that ranger who led us back to our tents that evening, because if we didn't, no one knows what would have happened to us in those woods.